The wind was blowing so hard that night that even the streetlights looked tired trying to shine through the snow. The roads were nearly empty, and most people were already safe inside their warm homes. Only a few cars passed now and then, moving slowly because the snowstorm had turned the whole city into a white blur. Adrian kept both hands tight on the steering wheel as he drove, trying to see clearly through the windshield. He had stayed late finishing a meeting that should have ended hours earlier, and now he was paying the price for it. His head was tense, his back was stiff, and he just wanted to get home, eat something hot. He wasn't the type to drive around at night on purpose. He lived a fast-paced life, making decisions most people never had to worry about. Running a growing company at a young age meant long days, last-minute calls, and endless thinking. Even when he wasn't working, his mind was still making lists, planning strategies, or solving hidden problems. But tonight, all he wanted was silence and warmth. As he approached a long, empty stretch of road, something caught his eye. At first, he thought it was just a shadow, maybe a plastic bag blown by the wind. But when he got closer, he realized it was a person standing at a bus stop. A small figure, wrapped in a thin coat, was holding something close against her chest. He would have kept driving like most people probably would. But suddenly he heard a faint sound, almost too soft, under the sound of the storm. It was a baby crying. Weakly, Adrian slowed down without even thinking. His car crept forward until the headlights lit up the bus stop clearly. A young woman stood there, shivering so hard her shoulders shook. Snow was gathered in her hair and on her sleeves. She held a small baby wrapped in a blanket that looked far too thin for the weather. The blanket was wet. The woman's face was red from the cold, and her lips were trembling. Even from inside the warm car, Adrian could see the fear in her eyes. He pulled up beside them and rolled down his window a little, letting in a blast of cold air. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked. The woman shook her head slowly. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Please, do you know if a bus is coming? We've been waiting for so long." Adrian looked at the digital clock on his dashboard. It was almost midnight. No buses would run at this time, not in a storm like this. "No," he said gently. "There won't be any buses tonight." She closed her eyes for a moment, almost like the words hurt her. The baby whimpered again, and she hugged him closer, trying to shield him. "Do you have somewhere to go?" Adrian asked. She hesitated. Her breath was shaky. I thought I did, but they told me to leave. I don't have anywhere else." He felt something tug inside him. Normally, he was careful with strangers. He had grown used to people pretending around him, pretending to be kind, honest, or helpless, only to take advantage later. But there was nothing fake about the way this young woman looked. Her shoes were soaked. Her coat was too old. Her hands were trembling from cold, not acting. "Your baby," Adrian said softly. "His blanket is wet. He'll get sick." "I know," she whispered, voice breaking. "I tried to cover him, but the snow keeps hitting us. I didn't know where else to go." He leaned back in his seat and sighed. He wasn't a foolish man. He knew bringing a stranger into his car was something most people would avoid. But leaving a young mother and her baby outside in a storm felt wrong in every possible way. "Get in," finally said. She blinked, shocked.
"What? Get in the car?"
"Both of you. You can't stay out here." She didn't move. Maybe she didn't trust him. Maybe she was scared. Or maybe she couldn't believe anyone would help her. "I'm not going to hurt you," Adrian said, keeping his voice steady. "It's freezing out here. Please, just get inside where it's warm." She looked down at the baby, then at the snow-covered street behind her. The wind pushed hard against her thin coat. After a moment, she nodded slowly. Adrian unlocked the passenger door. She pulled it open and carefully climbed inside. The warmth of the car made her gasp softly, as if it almost hurt her skin. The baby, wrapped tight against her chest, made a small sound of relief. She shut the door, and for the first time, Adrian could hear the storm clearly outside. Inside, everything was quiet, except for the baby's soft whimpers. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much. I didn't know what else to do. What's your name?" Adrian asked as he pulled the car back onto the road. "Lena," she said quietly. "And this is my son." She didn't tell him the baby's name at first. She looked nervous, like she still wasn't sure she should trust him. Adrian didn't push for details. He turned the heater up. "You're shaking. Are you hurt? Do you need a hospital?" "No, I'm not hurt," she said. "Just cold, very cold. And tired." He glanced at her again. Her eyes were swollen, maybe from crying earlier. Snowflakes were still melting in her hair. The baby's blanket had soaked through. So Adrian reached behind his seat and pulled out a clean emergency blanket he kept in the car. "Here," he said. "Wrap him in this." She hesitated before taking it, as if she wasn't used to receiving help. But when she finally took the blanket, she wrapped her baby gently, whispering comforting words to him. "Thank you," she said again. Adrian nodded, but didn't say anything. He kept his eyes on the road, driving slowly through the storm. After a few minutes of silence, Lena spoke again. "I'm sorry if I'm causing trouble." "I know it's late. You're not causing trouble," Adrian replied. "I just didn't want to see you two freezing out there. Especially your baby." Lena looked down at the small face sleeping against her chest. She bit her lip as if trying not to cry. "I didn't think today would end like this," she whispered. "I thought things were finally getting better." Adrian didn't ask what happened. He figured she would tell him when she felt ready. "How old is he?" he asked instead. 8 months, she answered softly. "He's usually cheerful. He likes laughing. But the cold. He couldn't handle it." Her voice cracked again. Adrian felt a strange heaviness in his chest. He didn't know her, yet something about her made him feel strangely protective. He drove in silence for a while, letting Lena warm up. The heater filled the car with soft air, and the baby soon stopped crying completely. "Do you live far from here?" she finally asked. Adrian hesitated. "Not too far. I was heading home." Her fingers tightened around the baby's blanket. "Oh, I didn't mean to take you out of your way. I can get down somewhere else. Anywhere warm. A shelter, maybe." "There are no open shelters this late," he said. "Especially in a storm like this." She lowered her head. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," Adrian said gently. "You're just someone who needs help." She looked surprised, like no one had ever said that to her before. The quiet stretched again. The road was nearly empty except for the soft blanket of snow covering everything. After a while, Lena spoke once more, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't think anyone would stop for us," she said. Cars passed. People looked. But nobody stopped. Adrian tightened his grip on the steering wheel. He wasn't sure what to say to that. "Well," he finally said, "I'm glad I did." When he turned toward the direction of his building, Lena's eyes widened slightly. She looked at the tall towers glowing in the distance, their lights cutting through the snowy sky. "You live there?" she asked softly. "Yes," he answered. Her voice grew smaller. "Are you sure it's okay for us to come?" "It's okay," Adrian said. "You both need warmth." That's all. She didn't argue after that. Maybe she didn't have the strength to. Maybe she was too tired to question anything anymore. She simply held her baby close and watched the buildings draw nearer as they reached the entrance of the parking area. Adrian could feel the uneasiness in her. She was still scared, still unsure, still holding on tightly to her child. But there was something else in her eyes, too, something like hope, maybe the tiniest, faintest hope that tonight wouldn't end as badly as it began. And as Adrian parked the car and stepped out to help her, he didn't know yet that this simple act of kindness was about to change his life in ways he never expected. When Adrian helped Lena out of the car, she held her baby close, as if the whole world might slip from her hands if she loosened her grip even a little. Snow kept falling around them, covering the ground in a thick white layer. The cold air bit at their faces, and the baby gave a soft cry when the wind touched him. Lena tried to shield him with her coat, even though she looked like the one who needed the shielding. "Come on," Adrian said gently. "Let's get inside before the cold gets worse." Lena nodded, though her eyes showed how nervous she still was. She followed him slowly, stepping carefully as if unsure whether this was real or a dream she would wake up from at any moment. The entrance to the building was warm and brightly lit. Security guard sitting behind the desk glanced at Adrian, then at Lena, then back at Adrian. Adrian simply gave a small nod. The guard understood and didn't ask questions. Lena noticed and held the baby a little tighter. Inside the elevator, she stood near the corner, trying to take up as little space as possible. The baby stirred in her arms, finally starting to warm up. Adrian noticed her eyes locked onto the numbers above the door as the elevator went up. "You're safe," he said softly. She blinked and looked at him, as if the words touched something deep inside her. "I'm not used to places like this," she whispered. "You don't have to be," he replied. "You just need somewhere warm." The elevator doors opened onto a quiet hallway. The lights were soft, and the floor looked like it had been polished recently. Lena stepped out slowly, glancing around in awe. She didn't say anything, but her expression showed she was overwhelmed. Adrian unlocked his door and pushed it open. A soft glow filled the spacious living room, warm and welcoming. The air smelled faintly of fresh wood and clean linen. Everything was tidy, organized, and calm, nothing like the chaos outside. "Come in," he said. Lena took one step inside, then another. She hesitated at the doorway, the same way someone might hesitate before stepping onto a stage. Her eyes darted from one corner of the room to another, wide and uncertain. She looked almost afraid to breathe too loudly. "You're free to sit anywhere," Adrian said. "Make yourself comfortable." She gave a small nod and slowly walked toward the nearest couch. When she sat down, she sank into the cushions as if her body had forgotten what softness felt like. The baby yawned and pressed his small face into her chest with a tired sigh. Adrian walked to the kitchen and filled a kettle with water. "Are you hungry?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. She looked down at her baby before speaking. "A little," she whispered, "but he needs something warm more than I do." "I'll bring something for both of you," Adrian said. When he returned with a warm towel, she looked surprised. "You really don't have to, I know," he said, handing it to her. "But it's cold outside. He needs this." Lena carefully unwrapped the baby from his wet blanket and dried him gently with the towel. She looked so focused, so careful, as if every small movement mattered. Adrian handed her a clean baby blanket he found in a cabinet. He didn't even remember buying it, but maybe a guest had gifted it at some point. Lena stared at the blanket for a moment before touching it. "This is soft," she murmured. "Are you sure it's okay for him to use it?" "It's here, isn't it?" Adrian replied with a small smile. She wrapped the baby in it. And for the first time since he'd seen them, the baby looked comfortable. His tiny fists relaxed, and he fell asleep almost instantly. Lena's shoulders finally dropped, as if she'd been carrying a heavy weight that she could now set down for a moment. Her eyes glistened, and she quickly wiped them with the back of her hand. Adrian pretended not to notice. He didn't want to make her feel embarrassed. He brought her a bowl of warm soup and some bread. She thanked him softly and took small bites, almost like she was afraid of eating too much. She kept glancing at the baby, checking his breathing, touching his forehead gently. "Take your time," Adrian said. Lena nodded, but her throat tightened. I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "Nobody has ever helped me like this. You don't have to thank me," he replied. "Just rest." There was a long pause. Then Lena spoke again, her voice fragile. "I didn't know where to go tonight. When they told me to leave the room I was renting, I thought I'd at least make it to a friend's place. But she wasn't home. And then the snow started, and the baby was so cold." Her hands shook a little. "You're safe now," Adrian said. She looked up at him. For the first time, there was a hint of trust in her eyes. Not complete trust, but the beginning of it. After she finished eating, he showed her a guest room. It wasn't extravagant, but it was warm, clean, and quiet. The bed looked soft enough to fall asleep on instantly. "If you want, you can stay here tonight," Adrian said. "It's better than you two freezing out there." Lena stepped inside the room and stood still, as if she wasn't sure whether to touch anything. The baby slept soundly in her arms. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "This is too much." "It's not," Adrian said. "It's just one night. Rest. That's all." She gave a small nod. "Thank you." Adrian stepped back toward the door, giving her space. But just as he was about to leave, she spoke again. "I promise I won't cause trouble," she said quietly. "I'll stay out of the way. I'll be gone as soon as the snow stops. I won't take anything. I won't stop," Adrian said gently. "You don't need to explain anything. Just take care of your baby." Her eyes filled with emotion again. She looked down at the baby and smoothed his tiny hand with her finger. "Okay," she whispered. "Thank you." He turned off the bright lights and left her with a soft lamp, closing the door halfway so she wouldn't feel trapped. As he walked down the hallway toward his own room, he rubbed the back of his neck.
Ow.
Trying to understand the strange feeling inside his chest. It wasn't pity. It wasn't guilt. It was something else, something he wasn't used to. Maybe worry. Maybe responsibility. Maybe something deeper. He tried to sleep, but his mind kept drifting back to the image of Lena standing in the snow with her baby. He thought of her thin coat, the wet blanket, the way her lips trembled from the cold. He thought of the baby's weak cry and how helpless he had looked. Hours later, when he finally drifted off, he wasn't sure whether he had made the right decision or not, but he knew he wouldn't have forgiven himself if he'd left them outside in the early morning. He woke up to a soft sound. It wasn't the storm. The snow had slowed down. It was something else, something gentle. He stepped out into the hallway and listened. There it was again, a quiet humming. A soft melody, warm and calming. The sound came from the guest room. He approached slowly and paused at the half-open door. He didn't want to intrude, but he couldn't help listening. Inside, Lena sat on the bed with her baby in her arms. She had changed into the dry clothes he left for her, and her hair was slightly damp, suggesting she had taken a quick shower. She looked much warmer now, though her eyes still carried traces of exhaustion. She was rocking the baby gently and humming a lullaby. Her voice was soft, almost like a whisper, but it filled the room with something peaceful and tender. Adrian stood there quietly, unsure what to do. He didn't want to interrupt the moment, but he also didn't want to seem like he was spying. Before he could decide, Lena looked up and saw him. For a moment, she froze. But then she smiled, just a small, shy smile. "Good morning," she said softly. "Morning," he replied. "I didn't mean to disturb you." "You didn't," she said. He woke up a little hungry. "I was just calming him." Her voice was calmer now, more steady. She looked different in the morning, light still tired, but not broken like last night. "I can make breakfast," Adrian offered awkwardly. "If you want," she shifted the baby in her arms. "Only if it's not too much trouble." "It's not," he said, as he went to the kitchen. He couldn't help noticing how the apartment felt. Different, warmer, livelier, as if the presence of a mother, humming to her baby, had filled the place with something he had never felt in his home. Before, while he cooked, Lena walked in slowly, holding the baby close. She stood near the doorway, unsure if she should sit or help. "You can sit," Adrian said. "You don't have to do anything." She nodded and sat carefully, placing the baby in her lap. The baby reached toward the steam rising from the food, fascinated by the warm air. Lena smiled at the sight. "He feels safe," she whispered. "It's been a long time since he felt warm like this." Adrian placed the plates on the table. "Both of you should feel safe." She looked up at him again, and something changed in her expressions, something softer. Something like gratitude, but also something like confusion. As if she couldn't understand why a stranger would care, they ate quietly for a while. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was gentle, the kind that gave room for breathing. When they finished, Adrian took a deep breath before speaking. "What are your plans now?" he asked. Lena looked down at the baby, touching his cheek gently. "I don't know," she admitted. "I just need to find a place we can stay. Even a small one. I'll find work. I'll figure it out." Her voice was steady, but he could hear the fear underneath. "You don't have to leave right away," Adrian said. "Stay until the weather clears. Rest. Think. One night isn't enough for anyone to recover." She frowned slightly. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Her eyes softened. "I wish there were more people like you in the world," she whispered. Adrian looked away, unsure how to respond. But deep down, he knew that this wasn't the end of their story. Something about Lena and her baby had already woven itself into a place inside him he didn't even know existed. And as the morning light brightened the room, something new began forming between them, something quiet but strong, something neither of them fully understood yet, something that would change everything. The day moved slowly in a calm way, almost like the world outside was taking a deep breath after the long night. The storm had stopped, leaving a quiet blanket of white over the city. Sunlight slipped through the tall windows of Adrian's apartment, filling the rooms with a soft golden glow. It was peaceful, but inside both Adrian and Lena, there was a strange mix of calm and uncertainty. After breakfast, Adrian went to check a few work emails. He tried to focus on the long list of tasks waiting for him, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the guest room. He kept wondering if Lena felt safe. He wondered if her baby was warm enough. And every time he tried to push the worry aside, it returned like a soft knock in his mind. Meanwhile, Lena sat on the couch with her baby resting against her shoulder. She admired the sunlight coming through the large windows. She wasn't used to places like this, quiet, warm, full of soft light. Back where she used to live, mornings were full of noise from neighbors' cars, and sometimes arguments drifting through the walls. But here there was only silence, the kind that made a person feel like they could breathe freely for the first time in a long while. Her baby, now warm and fed, seemed happier too. He touched the air with his tiny fingers, curious about everything he saw. Every little movement he made brought a smile to Lena's face. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "You're okay. You're safe. That's all that matters." She didn't know how long they would be allowed to stay. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But in that moment, she was grateful, truly grateful for the warm room, the kind stranger, and the chance to rest without fear. When Adrian came back to the living room, he found Lena softly rocking her baby and humming, just like earlier in the morning. He stood there for a second, just watching. Something about the scene made his apartment feel less empty, less cold. Something had shifted. "Is he feeling better now?" Adrian asked, walking closer. Lena nodded. "Much better. I think the warmth helped him a lot." "That's good," Adrian said softly. "He looks peaceful." She looked at her baby with a small smile. "He doesn't get many peaceful days. So this. It means more than you know." Adrian took a seat across from her. The quiet between them wasn't awkward. It felt like they were slowly learning how to exist in the same space without fear or tension. After a moment, he asked, "Do you want to tell me what happened last night?" His voice wasn't demanding. It was gentle, an invitation, not a requirement. Lena looked down, brushing her baby's tiny hand with her finger. Her lips tightened for a moment, as if she was deciding whether she could trust her own voice. "It's complicated," she finally said. "And it's not a story I tell easily." "You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready for," Adrian said quickly. "I only asked because you looked scared when I found you." She nodded. "I was scared. More than I've ever been." Lena took a slow breath, looking at her baby for strength. "I was renting a small room from a woman who lived on the other side of town. It wasn't much, but it was something. I cleaned her place sometimes to cover part of the cost. She wasn't kind, but she wasn't cruel either. Just strict." Adrian listened quietly, giving her the space to speak. "But yesterday," Lena continued, "she told me I had to leave immediately. She said someone else offered to pay more for the room. She didn't even give me time to pack everything properly. She just told me to take my baby and go." Adrian felt his jaw tighten. "In the middle of winter?" "She didn't care about that," Lena said, shaking her head. "I tried to reason with her, begged, but she said business is business. I didn't have enough saved to find another place right away. I thought maybe I could stay with a friend for a day or two, but she wasn't home. And with the storm, I couldn't walk far." She looked away, embarrassed. "I stood at the bus stop hoping maybe a bus would come. I didn't know what else to do." Adrian's chest tightened. He imagined her standing there with her baby in the freezing wind, completely out of choices, completely alone. "You didn't deserve that," he said quietly. Lena gave a tired smile. Not everyone sees life the same way. Some people look at a girl with a baby and think she's trouble, or weak, or not worth helping. Adrian leaned forward. I don't think you're weak. Not at all, Lena blinked, slightly surprised. Why do you say that? Because someone who's weak doesn't protect their baby in a storm, he said. Someone who's weak doesn't keep going when they're cold, scared, and exhausted. Weak people give up. You didn't. Stared at him for a moment, and her eyes softened more than before. Thank you, she whispered. It means a lot to hear that. The baby let out a soft sound, stretching his little arms. Lena smiled and kissed his cheek. Adrian watched her carefully. There was something gentle about her, something warm and grounding. She had a strength she wasn't even aware of, quiet strength that made him look at her with a different kind of respect. After a long pause, Adrian stood up. I need to stop by my office for a short meeting, he said. It shouldn't take too long. Will you two be okay here? Lena's eyes widened slightly. You're leaving us here? Alone? Yes, he said simply. I trust you. She looked stunned. Her fingers tightened slightly around her baby. I won't touch anything. I promise. I know, Adrian said with a small smile. That's why I'm not worried. She nodded slowly, still looking unsure. Okay, we'll be fine. If you need anything, he said, pointing to the small device on the table, just press the button. It calls me directly. She stared at it like it was something precious. I won't bother you. I'll just take care of him. You're not a bother, Lena, he said gently. I wouldn't have brought you here if I didn't want to help. She lowered her eyes, touched by the words. Adrian grabbed his coat and stepped toward the door. But something made him stop and look back. Lena was sitting quietly on the couch, her baby nestled against her chest, the sunlight warming them both. The sight softened something inside him. Rest while I'm gone, he said. You look like you haven't slept properly in days. She let out a breath, almost a silent laugh. Probably weeks. Then start today, he said. And then he left. The moment the door closed, the apartment fell into a quiet stillness. Lena looked around slowly. The place felt too big for her, too clean, too beautiful. She walked toward the window and looked out at the snowy city below. She had never been so high up before. Everything looked small. The cars, the people, even the street she had walked on the night before. Her baby shifted in her arms and she held him closer. We're safe, she whispered. Just for today, we're safe. She found herself exploring the apartment a little, but carefully, as if she might break something if she stepped too loudly. She didn't dare open any drawers or cabinets unless necessary. She didn't want to give Adrian any reason to regret helping her. She changed her baby's clothes, cleaned him gently, and then lay beside him on the bed in the guest room. For the first time in a long time, she closed her eyes without fear pressing down on her chest. The room felt warm. The blankets were soft. The quiet wrapped around her like a gentle embrace. Within minutes, she fell asleep. Hours passed. When she woke again, she wasn't sure where she was at first. The room felt too comfortable, too soft. She blinked, remembering last night, the snow, the cold, and then Adrian's voice telling her she was safe. Her baby was sleeping peacefully beside her. She stretched her fingers slowly. It had been so long since she slept for more than an hour at a time. She felt lighter somehow. Not healed, but no longer drowning. Just then, she heard the door open and close softly. Adrian was back. He walked to the living room and noticed the quiet. At first, he thought Lena might still be nervous, sitting silently and waiting for him. But when he peeked into the guest room, he found her sleeping like someone who hadn't rested in months. He didn't want to wake her. But the baby shifted and made a small whimpering sound. Lena woke instantly, her protective instincts sharp. When she saw Adrian, she sat up quickly, embarrassed. I'm sorry, she said softly. I didn't mean to sleep so long. Adrian shook his head. Don't apologize. You needed it. I didn't hear you come in, she said, rubbing her eyes. That means you were finally resting, Adrian replied. Her baby woke fully and reached toward Adrian with a curious little hand. Adrian chuckled and came closer. He likes you, Lena said, surprised. I'm honored, he said. Smiling, Lena looked around as if searching for something. I hope I didn't take up too much space. You didn't take up any space, Adrian said. This room is for you both. For as long as you need. She blinked, confused. I thought you said just until the weather clears. I said that, Adrian admitted. But you look like you need more than just a day or two. You're offering for us to stay longer? Yes, he said calmly. If you want to. I'm not forcing you. Lena stared at him, speechless. She could barely find the words. I don't want you feeling rushed or afraid, Adrian continued. You need time, and he needs stability. She swallowed hard, tears filling her eyes. Nobody has ever said that to me before. Adrian didn't know what to do with the sudden emotion in her voice, so he simply sat down on the edge of the bed. Keeping a respectful distance, you deserve a chance, he said softly. A tear rolled down her cheek, but she wiped it quickly. Embarrassed. I don't want to be a burden, she whispered again. You're not, he replied. But I have nothing, she said. I can't repay you. I'm not asking for repayment. Then why? She asked, her voice breaking. Why help someone like me? Adrian looked at her for a long moment, trying to find the right words. Because I know what it's like to feel alone, he finally said. And because sometimes the smallest bit of kindness can change someone's whole life. Lena lowered her head, overwhelmed. He continued, and maybe I just don't want your son growing up thinking the world is always cold. Lena pressed her hand over her baby's back, feeling the warmth of his small body. She looked up again, her eyes soft but filled with disbelief. Thank you, she whispered. I don't even know how to begin to show how much this means. You don't have to, Adrian said. Just take care of him. The baby giggled, suddenly a soft, joyful sound that filled the whole room with warmth neither of them expected. Lena laughed quietly, wiping her face. Adrian felt something settle gently in his chest at the sound. The weight between them shifted again, becoming something deeper, something warm and steady, something that neither of them fully understood yet. But both could feel growing quietly, and as the soft light of afternoon fell across the room, it became clear that the story between the young Tycoon and the girl he had found in the snow was only just beginning. The days that followed moved quietly, almost like the world was giving Lena and her baby space to breathe again. Adrian got busier with his work, but even in the middle of meetings and calls, he kept thinking about them. It wasn't something he planned or even understood. It just happened. Every time he passed the guest room door, every time he heard the baby laugh or make tiny sounds, something inside him softened in a way he didn't expect. Lena noticed it too. He never said much, but the small things gave him away. He made sure there was warm food at home, even when he returned late. He ordered baby supplies without saying a word about it. He cleared space in one of the cupboards so she could keep her things neatly. It was the kind of kindness that didn't ask for attention. It just existed. Meanwhile, the baby grew more comfortable. He no longer cried out of fear when he woke up. Instead, he looked around with curious eyes and reached out for anything bright or moving. Sometimes Adrian would stop by the crib and watch the little one kick his feet. He tried to act like he was only checking if Lena needed anything, but both of them knew he was starting to care far more than he wanted to admit. One evening, Adrian received an email from the investigator he had quietly hired. The message confirmed what Lena had told him about her old job. There had been a long chain of unfair decisions, all tied to a supervisor who took advantage of employees who couldn't defend themselves. The investigator also found that several others had gone through the same thing. Adrian stared at the screen for a long moment, feeling a mix of frustration and determination rise inside him. He didn't tell Lena about the investigation. He didn't want to raise her hopes until everything was settled. Instead, he asked the investigator to gather enough evidence to help everyone involved, not just her. If something could be fixed, he wanted it fixed properly. Over the next week, Lena noticed that Adrian became quieter than usual. Not distant, just thoughtful. He would pause in the middle of pouring coffee or stare out the window a little longer than necessary. She wondered if she had overstayed her welcome, even though he never gave her a reason to think so. She tried to stay out of his way, cleaning the rooms she used, washing the dishes, folding blankets neatly. She wanted to show gratitude in ways she knew she could, but Adrian wasn't bothered by her presence. In fact, He found himself looking forward to hearing the baby's footsteps, or seeing Lena humming softly while warming milk. The penthouse felt different now. Less like a place someone lived in, and more like a place where life actually happened. One night, when snowflakes fell gently outside, they ended up sitting in the living room at the same time. The baby was asleep in Lena's arms, and the glow from the lamp made the room feel warm and gentle. Adrian sat on the opposite couch, holding a cup of tea he hadn't taken a sip from. "You look tired," Lena said quietly. He smiled a little. "Long day, but it'll be fine." There was a small silence before she spoke again. "You've already done more than anyone else would have done. I don't want to make things difficult for you. I'm grateful, but I don't want to take advantage." Adrian looked at her with a mixture of surprise and confusion. "You're not taking advantage of anything. You're just trying to find your footing again. Everyone deserves that." She lowered her eyes and gently rocked the baby without thinking. "Still, I want to be able to stand on my own. I don't want to stay here forever. I just need a little more time." He leaned back, watching her closely. She didn't realize how strong she looked in that moment, tired, but determined in a way that made him admire her even more. "You have more strength than you think," he said softly, "but you don't have to rush. You and the little one are safe here." Her eyes lifted, meeting his, and for the first time, she didn't look scared of overstaying. Instead, she looked like someone who finally felt seen. The next morning brought surprising news. Adrian's investigator sent him a final report saying the corruption case was officially being exposed. A legal process had begun, and compensation was being prepared for the employees who were wronged. Adrian read every line carefully, feeling a sense of satisfaction, not because he wanted credit, but because Lena deserved justice. Later that day, he set up an anonymous channel through a lawyer so that the compensation would be delivered to Lena without his name attached. He didn't want her to feel she owed him anything. He wanted her to feel free, but he wasn't done yet. He had something else in mind, something far more personal, in the evening. When Lena finished putting the baby down to sleep, she walked into the dining area and found Adrian sitting with a small folder on the table. He didn't look tense, but he looked like someone who had made up his mind about something important. "Can we talk?" he asked. She nodded and took a seat across from him. Her hands folded nervously on her lap. "I've been thinking about your situation," he began slowly. "You have talent. You're hardworking. You don't give up easily. That's rare." Lena blinked in surprise. "I don't know if that's true." "It is," he said with certainty. "And you mentioned once that you wanted to start something of your own, a small online craft business." She looked down, embarrassed. "It's just a dream. I don't have the money. I barely have anything." "I know," he replied. Then he gently pushed the folder toward her. "That's why I want to help you start it." Lena stared at the folder, but didn't touch it. "What do you mean?" "Inside is a plan," he explained. "A small grant, equipment, some basic materials, and a place where you can work without stress. I also have an unused apartment I own. You and the baby can stay there as long as you need. No rent, no pressure. Just a safe place." Her eyes widened, and she shook her head lightly as if trying to make sure she heard him correctly. "Why would you do all that?" "You've already done so much. 'Cause you deserve a chance," he said in a calm voice. "And because I believe you'll make something beautiful out of it." Her breath caught, and she pressed a hand over her mouth as tears filled her eyes. She tried to speak, but couldn't at first. The weight of months of fear, stress, and uncertainty poured out in quiet. Shaky breaths. "I don't know how to thank you," she finally whispered. "No one has ever done anything like this for me." "You don't have to thank me," he replied. "Just build the life you want." He didn't reach out to her or make any dramatic gesture. He just sat there, letting her cry softly, while holding on to a hope she thought she had lost forever. After a few minutes, she wiped her face gently. "I promise I won't waste this chance. I'll work hard. I'll make you proud," he smiled. "You already have." That night, when she returned to the guest room, she held her sleeping baby close, whispering promises of a brighter future. She felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time: security. And underneath that, something even more rare: belonging. Adrian stayed in the dining room alone for a while, staring at the snowflakes drifting past the window. For the first time in years, he felt like his life had direction beyond work or business. Helping Lena wasn't just an act of kindness. It was something that changed him too, in ways he didn't fully understand yet. He knew there were more decisions to make ahead, more steps to take. But for now, he allowed himself a quiet moment of peace. He had done something right, something human. And deep down, he sensed that this story, which started with a snowstorm and a desperate knock on a car window, was only beginning to unfold. The next few months passed in a way none of them expected. Life didn't suddenly become perfect, but it finally began to make sense. The apartment Adrian offered was small compared to his penthouse, but to Lena, it felt like a castle. It had warm lighting, clean rooms, and a little corner where she set up her workspace for her crafts. Everything was peaceful there, and for the first time in years. She woke up without fear or uncertainty clouding her mind. She visited Adrian often, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Their conversations, once short and careful, grew longer and more comfortable. Sometimes she brought the baby over just so Adrian could see him smile or take his small steps along the living room carpet. Every time the little one saw him, he reached his tiny hands up as if asking to be carried. Adrian tried to act like it didn't melt his heart, but everyone in the room knew the truth. Lena grew more confident with her business too. What started as a small online project began to take shape. Orders came slowly at first, then steadily. People loved her handmade items because they carried a warmth that couldn't be faked. She put her whole heart into everything she made, almost as if she was stitching her past. Pain into something softer and more hopeful, Adrian helped quietly from the background. He offered advice when she asked, shared resources if she needed them, and checked in on how things were going. But he was careful never to take control. He wanted her to feel like her success was truly hers, not something handed to her. He respected that she wanted independence, and he admired it even more with each passing day. Sometimes, after a long day of work, Lena sat by her apartment window, looking at the city lights. She would think about how different her life had been just a short time ago. She stood freezing in the snow with nowhere to go. The contrast felt unreal. It reminded her of how fragile things could be, and how one act of kindness could change everything. One late afternoon, she brought her baby to visit Adrian. He was sitting on the floor in the living room, surrounded by a few toys he had ordered online, just in case. The baby crawled toward him with the kind of excitement only children have. Adrian laughed softly as he picked him up, lifting him playfully until the baby erupted in small giggles. "You're getting heavier," Adrian said gently. "He is," Lena replied with a tired smile. "He's growing fast." She placed a small bag on the kitchen counter filled with items she had made for him to see. Adrian glanced at it but continued playing with the baby for a moment longer. There was something peaceful about watching the two of them together. It made Lena feel like they had known each other far longer than they actually had. After a few minutes, she sat down near them. "I want to show you something," she said. Adrian looked up curiously. She opened the bag and pulled out a few pieces handmade decorations, small crafts. Things she had been experimenting with. "These are beautiful," said honestly. "I made them for a new project," she explained. "I'm planning to expand the shop. People seem interested in more than just the usual items. I want to do something bigger." "That's great," Adrian replied with a warm nod. "You should do it. You've built something strong already." She hesitated before speaking again. "I couldn't have done any of this without your help. You did it because you're capable," he said quietly. "I only gave you a place to start." She looked down for a moment, touched but also nervous. There was something else she wanted to say, something she had been carrying inside her for weeks. It wasn't clear or perfect, but it was honest. "You know, my life changed the night you stopped the car," she began. "Not just because you gave me shelter. It was more than that. You treated me like a person when I felt invisible." Adrian didn't interrupt. He just listened, the way he always did when something mattered. "I don't think I've thanked you properly," she continued. "Not for everything you gave me, but for everything you helped me find in myself." His eyes softened. "You don't owe me anything, Lena. You really don't." "I know," she whispered, "but I still feel it. There was a small silence. The baby reached for Adrian's sleeve, pulling it gently, as if asking for attention again. Adrian smiled and adjusted the baby on his lap. Then he looked back at Lena. "You changed my life too," he said finally. "More than I expected." She blinked, surprised. "How?" Adrian exhaled slowly, choosing his words with care. "I spent most of my life focused on work. Success, deals, growth, all of that. I never stopped to think about anything outside of it. Meeting you and the baby made me rethink what matters. You didn't just come into my life. You opened it." Lena felt her heart tighten in her chest, the kind of feeling that wasn't painful, but overwhelming in the best way. She didn't know what to say at first. Her throat felt warm, her eyes a little blurry. Adrian wasn't someone who said emotional things easily, so hearing something like this from him meant more than he knew. The baby shifted in his arms, resting his small head against Adrian's chest. It was a quiet, simple moment. But it carried more meaning than anything dramatic could have. Days turned into weeks, and their bond kept growing naturally. There were no grand declarations or rushed decisions. They simply spent more time together, shared more conversations, trusted each other more. Every step they took felt steady and calm, like walking on solid ground after years of sinking into uncertainty. As Lena's business continued to grow, she found herself dreaming of a future that no longer frightened her. A future where her child grew up safe, loved, and surrounded by people who genuinely cared. A future where she wasn't alone. One morning, she received a letter confirming that the compensation from her previous job had been approved. It arrived through the lawyer Adrian had arranged, though he never mentioned it. She knew he was responsible, but she didn't confront him about it. She simply held the letter close and smiled, grateful from the bottom of her heart. Later that week, she visited Adrian again. This time, she didn't bring anything except a quiet sense of certainty. Adrian opened the door, surprised but happy to see her. "Everything okay?" She nodded. "Yes. I just wanted to tell you something." He stepped aside so she could enter. The baby reached for him instantly, and Adrian picked him up without hesitation. Lena took a breath, steadying herself. "I know you don't do things expecting something in return, but I want you to know something. We're not just people you helped. You've become family to us." The words hung in the air with a gentle weight. Adrian didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked at her with an expression she had never seen on him before, something soft, warm, and deeply certain. "I feel the same," he said. "They didn't need anything more than that." The moment was enough. Months later, as winter returned, the three of them stood outside Adrian's building, watching the first snowfall of the season. The baby clapped his little hands, trying to catch the snowflakes falling softly around him. Lena laughed, lifting him higher. Adrian stood close beside them, one hand lightly brushing Lena's arm, as if making sure she wouldn't drift away again. The wind was cold, but none of them felt it much. They were together. They were safe. And they had built something real out of a moment that started with fear and desperation on a snowy night. Life still had challenges ahead, but now they faced them as something stronger than just three individuals. They faced them as a family that never expected to find each other, yet somehow did, because one act of kindness in a snowstorm changed everything.